Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the NHS here draws up plans to stop medicines running out if there's a no-deal Brexit. The use of mesh implants in Scotland should be banned, according to a Holyrood report.
It's definitely not over. It won't be over until they stop it, and we won't go away until they stop it.
Also coming up, this tidal energy turbine generated more electricity in its first year than the entire wave and tidal sector before it. Why does the number of children going to hospital with asthma attacks surge when they head back to school? And taking the fringe to the fringes, a social media appeal brings performers flocking to an Edinburgh primary school. Good evening. Senior NHS managers have been meeting today to draw up contingency plans in the event of a no-deal Brexit. BBC Scotland has learned they're speaking to suppliers to ensure at least 6 weeks' worth of medicines and fresh equipment are available. The Chief Medical Officer has already confirmed that detailed plans are being drawn up. But UK ministers say they hope things will run smoothly. Here's our political correspondent, Andrew Kerr.
The NHS in Scotland seems to be stepping up to the Brexit challenge. The Chief Medical Officer says detailed contingency plans have been drawn up to secure the medicine and equipment supply chain if there's a no-deal Brexit. We understand senior managers met today to make sure there are enough supplies for 6 weeks. Medicine companies are engaged in that process, and ministers here are speaking with the UK Department of Health.
We are trying to understand from them the medicines and devices that they think might be problematic in the event of a hard Brexit, feed in what our needs might be, and then the ideal would be, as colleagues I believe south of the border have said, is that we work collaboratively to try and ensure that there is a minimum disruption.
But there's frustration in Scotland at a lack of progress down south. This comes as hospitals and ambulance services in England say there's been radio silence from the UK Health Secretary. But talking of stockpiling is all well and good for hospitals and pharmacists. The reality is very different.
Pharmacists in community get deliveries twice a day for the medicines, so we deliver a really excellent service for patients. So there's not room, there is no built-in cost, there is no way that you could stockpile medicines in an individual community pharmacy. And in a hospital, they would normally work to maybe within a week of stock with them.
The Brexit Secretary was in Brussels for talks. This week he'll publish details on how the UK is preparing for a no-deal Brexit, no doubt partly designed to ramp up pressure for a deal.
It's natural that the government makes contingency plans, but it's also very clear that we can avoid any of these scenarios by goodwill on both sides and coming to an agreement over Britain's future relationship with Europe.
The prescription is don't panic, don't stockpile your own medicines. The suggestion is that talk of a no deal is a political tactic to try to ensure there is a deal. Andrew Kerr, Reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
The use of mesh implants in NHS Scotland should be banned, according to a Holyrood report. A review last year set out strict conditions for the use of the implants, but its findings were criticised by campaigners. Well, now the Public Petitions Committee wants to halt their use. The Scottish Government says it'll give serious consideration to the findings, as our health correspondent Lisa Summers reports.
For the campaigners who endure the debilitating effects of failed mesh implants, they wanted to be heard and believed.
Daily life is a struggle. I need help from the minute I open my eyes. I need help getting dressed, washed, everything.
You're just constant pain. There's no off switch, you can't switch it off. You can maybe take medications that will damp it down a wee bit.
Today's report from the Petitions Committee has, they say, finally given them that voice.
I have a smile on my face. Absolutely delighted with the committee's report. We can't thank them enough for all their hard work and for listening to us.
Mesh surgery was offered to thousands of women in Scotland for the treatment of conditions like incontinence or prolapse that often follow childbirth. The vast majority do not experience side effects, but for some they are chronic. Campaigners say they were never made aware of the risks of surgery. They brought their stories to Parliament in 2014. After that, the former Health Secretary said there would be a moratorium on mesh and ordered a review into its safety. But after that, the BBC discovered some health boards were still operating with mesh. The review was published last year, but it was highly controversial. Now a review of the review is underway.
It's been 4 years now since the committee began to scrutinise the evidence. Today's report is critical of the review for not offering clear guidelines to patients and clinicians. It says the government has been slow to implement recommendations, and it says it would prefer an outright ban on mesh operations, but acknowledges that that is not within the government's control.
The committee's convener says there are alternative options.
The Scottish Government funds the National Health Service. They have said they've got grave concerns with the procedure. The question I would ask is, why would public money be used for a procedure the Scottish Government itself has expressed grave concerns? And I think that's the way to address it.
The Chief Medical Officer says she's seriously considering the recommendations.
What I'm going to do after this public petitions report today is to write to all our health boards in Scotland to suggest that we have only a few centres of expertise where only a very small number of surgeons will actually be allowed to perform these procedures at all. This will make sure that they have experience and will really minimise any risks of complications.
It's taken a long time for Elaine and Olive to feel that they've been taken seriously. They still think the government could do more to ensure others are not subjected to the life-changing risks of mesh surgery.
Well, Lisa is at Holyrood this evening. Lisa, isn't it the case, though, that for some women this is still the right course of treatment?
Well, as you heard there, the Chief Medical Officer clearly feels that for a small number of women, mesh implants are the right course of action. And that's why she's moved today to say that they'll only be carried out by specialist surgeons and that the risks will be fully explained to the women involved, the patients involved. And that is the situation in England, where they've halted the procedures apart from in extreme circumstances. And that is perhaps when a woman is suffering very distressing symptoms because of severe incontinence. Campaigners, on the other hand, say one more case like theirs where they have to endure the consequences when things go wrong is too much, and that's why they would like to see a complete ban. But they do feel that the robust language used in today's report will at least compel the Scottish Government to do more than it has been doing to ensure these operations don't take place.
And you said yourself, this has been going on for 4 years. It's involved 3 health secretaries. Where does it go from here?
Well, that's right. We know that about 400 women have taken out legal action against health boards because of their experiences. That is ongoing. And of course, there is this review into the review that's being carried out by a professor at Glasgow Caledonian University. And she is due to publish her findings soon. The committee say that they're very keen to see that report and to review the findings that she comes up with. And then after that, they want to see a full debate in Parliament on the issue.
Lisa, thank you. A man and woman in their 60s are being treated in hospital after an accident at a traveller's site in Inverness. Firefighters were called to the area on Sunday after reports of a car on fire. Police say both were taken to Raigmore Hospital following the incident and that officers are following a positive line of inquiry. They've been named locally as George and Martha Stewart, believed to be from the Elgin area. An army cadet who raped a teenage girl at a school near Stirling has been detained for 3 years. 18-year-old Glenn Riddle attacked the 17-year-old at Bannockburn High School in November 2016. Despite a lengthy plea by Riddle's lawyer, the judge said custody was the only appropriate sentence. Glasgow City Council is facing legal action over what is claimed is the unacceptable treatment of residents and businesses after the Macintosh building fire. Govan Law Centre has confirmed it's seeking a judicial review of the risk assessment process before the cordon was erected around the site. Glasgow City Council said its priority was getting residents and businesses back to their properties safely. 33 households and 55 businesses have been displaced for 10 weeks. A flagship tidal energy turbine has now generated more electricity in its first year of operation than the entire wave and tidal sector in Scotland produced before it. The Scotch Renewables generator in the seas off Orkney typically produces 7% of the island's electricity needs. 'Here's our environment correspondent, Kevin Keane.
'Kevin Keane: 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 In the fast-flowing waters of the Fall of Warness, this tidal generator resembles a boat gliding through the waves. But in fact it's stationary, anchored to the seabed, and all of that moving energy is being used to create electricity. The SR2000 floats on the water with these two giant rotors underneath turning in the current. It's a lot different to the tidal generators which have gone before it.
So at the front of the system is where it's anchored and it's free to rotate and face into the tidal energy.
It's taken 15 years from the concept stage to having a full-sized prototype in the water, and the man behind it thinks the technology has finally been cracked.
Well, we've taken a very novel approach, and we believe we've got a disruptive technology in that space. Earlier innovations have been very much focused on replicating underwater wind turbines, but what you see in front of you now is more analogous to a boat, and that's what our turbine is.
This has now been here for a year, and in that time it's created more electricity than all other wave and tidal generators tested in Scotland before it. To give you an idea of how this works, this boat that we're travelling on is going at about 10 miles an hour just to stay in the same position, whereas the tidal power machine behind me is anchored to the seabed, and so all of that energy is being channeled to create electricity. It does make a contribution to the grid, averaging around 7% of Orkney's electricity needs, but compared to wind, this technology is still in its infancy.
Well, I think wind had about 50 years from when it first started, whereas wave and tidal has really been only over the last 10 years or so, and has actually made quite a lot of progress in that time. And as we move forward, we will see the bigger and bigger machines coming on.
One of the biggest tests for this was the harsh Orkney winter. It survived waves of 7 metres with near continuous operation. The developer is now looking to build more. Kevin Keane reporting, Scotland, Orkney.
A 45-year-old man is in hospital with serious injuries after reportedly being stabbed on a fishing boat at a port in Caithness overnight. It happened on board the vessel Briska at Scrabster Harbour at around midnight. Another man, who's also 45, has been arrested in connection with the incident. A man who left a 27-year-old woman fearing she was going to die during a sex attack has been jailed for 4 years. Colin Grimison from Belfast assaulted his victim after dragging her into an alley in Dumfries in May last year. The 26-year-old denies the charges but was convicted earlier this year. Marine accident inspectors have completed the first stage of their investigation into the death of a man on board a vessel at Fraserburgh Harbour. 52-year-old William Arnside died and 4 other men were treated in hospital following the incident last week. The number of children hospitalised for asthma attacks surges when they return to school after the summer holidays. The charity Asthma UK suggests there is an increase of 70% in admissions at the start of the new term compared with the previous month. Maura Kinnerborough can tell us more.
Isaac has asthma.
And now we're back to it.
The tubes taking air in and out of his lungs can narrow or tighten.
Well, sometimes I can be a bit short of breath and I can't breathe for a bit. And but if I have my blue puffer, then it can help and it can clear up.
He had an asthma attack when he was 8 years old. He became very seriously ill. Asthma can be fatal.
The worst part was that I'd had to carry him to the hospital because he had really lost all ability to walk because he was so weak. And at that point, I just didn't know what we were going to do. I didn't fully appreciate how quickly things could turn. I thought I knew about asthma, but when I was faced with an asthma attack, I didn't know how to deal with it in a kind of emergency situation.
Asthma UK says 71,000 children in Scotland have asthma. Emergency hospital admissions for child asthma attacks rose 70% in Scotland last August compared to last July.
The charity says children are at much greater risk of being admitted to hospital with a potentially fatal asthma attack after the summer holidays. It says this could be because going back to school exposes them to more viruses and they may have missed preventative medicine due to a lack of routine in the holidays.
What did you do? What was your first lesson? If I had known that the preventer actually would have stopped it escalating to such an extent, then I would have been given the preventer right from the start.
The advice to anyone caring for children is to look out for the symptoms: coughing, wheezing, breathlessness. And don't forget asthma checkups and medication. Maura Kinneborough, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
It's 16 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's main story. The NHS in Scotland draws up plans to stop medicines running out if there's a no-deal Brexit. And still to come, what do female fans think about their football? A project aims to find out. After a decade of planning, a small group of golden eagles has been released at a secret location in southern Scotland in the hope that they'll breed there. The birds were moved under licence from nests in the Highlands, where the majority of the species are found. Scottish Natural Heritage said the programme, which will last 5 years, is one of the most significant reintroduction projects ever undertaken for a large predator. A £3 million fund for television production in Scotland has been announced. It comes as figures for film and TV spend here sits at a record £95 million. The new fund from Creative Scotland will be open to Scotland-based production companies offering grants of between £10,000 and £500,000. A 20-year-old man has been arrested after life belts were thrown into the River Clyde in Glasgow. He faces charges of culpable and reckless conduct. Dozens of life belts, which are located in built-up areas of the city, have been recovered along the riverbank. Some sport for you now, and rugby's elite league, the Pro 14, returns soon, with both Glasgow Warriors and Edinburgh hoping to repeat their achievement of making last season's playoffs. Well, today, coaches and players from all 14 clubs launched the event. Andy Burke was there.
Celtic Park has been the scene of many a title victory over the years, but in May a trophy of a different kind will be won here, rugby's Pro 14.
The decision to bring the Pro 14 final here to the home of Celtic is part of the league's strategy to broaden the appeal of the competition. And in terms of growth, they have some pretty lofty targets in the coming years.
My job is to make sure that this is the best league in the world. On any metric you look at, pretty big strategic steps with the South Africans coming on board and the new TV cycle we've entered into. We really have closed the gap.
The team to beat this season is Leinster, the defending Pro 14 and European champions.
We're in a good place because we've had a taste of obviously the success we had last year, but not long before that we had 2 years where things didn't go our way in terms of losing the final to Connacht and not getting out of our pool in Europe to getting beaten in 2 semi-finals. So we had those 2 years of no success, and then we got a taste of it last year, and now we want that to be the start of a story rather than the end.
Both Scottish sides made the playoffs last season, so what are the targets this time?
Oh, we want to get there again because it's exciting and it's good fun, and we think we can go deep into the playoffs. The reality is, though, is that we have to be better than Leinster, European champions, Pro 14 champions, Scarlets, semi-finalists in Europe and finalists in the Pro 14, and Ulster. All three sides spend significantly more money than we do and have a very good deep squad. So the reality is we've got to be better than those three consistently.
When you look at our comp, the carrot to going one step further is to play at home at Celtic Park. So we'll always set goals of winning titles, but the key is just getting better and better as we go, and obviously playing our best footy at the business end of the season.
With the final being staged in Glasgow, there's even more incentive for the Scottish side to aim high this season. Andy Burke, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
And from rugby to football, and despite all the inroads, it's still predominantly a male-dominated sport. But about 9,000 women attend football matches each week. Well, now the Scottish Football Supporters Association wants to know about their experiences. Why? Heather Dewar can tell us.
Women's football is a sport that's growing here in Scotland, but attitudes towards the game and to female spectators can often be challenging. It's something that even the very best of footballers have experienced.
I was playing for Sturton United, the young boys team, and I think I scored about 7 or 8 goals that day. And a short back inside, so I could play with the guys. And there was a Celtic scout who wanted to sign me. And they said, no, it's a wee girl. And they said, no, the one that scored all the goals. still a wee girl.
But while women here in Scotland may be playing the game, are they actually watching it? Today, a survey is being launched by the Scottish Football Supporters Association. We'll look into the attitude of women at games. They'll look at things like match experience, their spend, and also their safety. It's estimated that up to 110,000 fans attend games across the SPFL on a weekly basis, and around 8% of them are women.
I think it's really important that we get the views and the voices of female football fans, especially as we now know that around 8% of fans who are turning up week in, week out to matches are women. It's time we had that say.
And it's hoped that information garnered from surveys such as this will lead to a level playing field among spectators.
The very first game I ever attended, I was asked by the director of another club as he shook my hands. Before I could say who I was, he did ask me, was I the entertainment? And much to his club's horror and mine, but that was a one-off in 3.5 years.
These sort of incidents are rare, but issues around women and football remain. The Supporters Association will now look to continue these campaigns on a yearly basis. Heather Dewar, reporting Scotland.
Well, talking of entertainment, as Edinburgh's festival season enters its final week, a local primary school has set up a fringe of its own. For many pupils at Gracemount Primary, show tickets are too expensive. So the school sent out an appeal on social media to bring the festival to them. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean reports.
With 3,500 shows at the Edinburgh Fringe, there's plenty to choose from, but it's all concentrated on one area, right in the city centre.
Every year there's people moan about how busy Princes Street is, how busy Edinburgh is, but it's an important contribution to our economy at this time of year. So it's great that it doesn't happen just in the centre of Edinburgh, that we can see the benefits, and the benefits are having all these actors in our school.
1, 2, 3.
So Gracemount Primary decided to stage a fringe of their own. A fringe of the fringe. They launched an appeal on social media to those prepared to bring shows to them and were inundated with replies.
I'd say we've had probably about 30 solid requests for shows, and then hundreds of actual messages of support or people tagging their friends saying, is this something you could be interested in?
They've selected 8 shows which will be staged here across the week, and so far pupils approve of the choice.
It was really good that they let everybody share their stories, and yeah.
It was really amazing, and I thought it was good to share stories with each other.
I thought that it was really good, and it's also good to share about the adult stories and like ours.
And the performers say it gives them breathing space too, and they'd happily do it again.
We've done Tales of Whatever in some strange places, but this is probably this has been a one-off experience so far, and it's something I would definitely do again.
The school too hopes their Fringe on the Fringe will become a regular part of the August festival season. Pauline McLean, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
I think this might have been the reaction of the man in our next story, because a man from Leicestershire who parked his car in a street in Edinburgh returned to find the vehicle gone and a sizable hole where he left it. Contractors from Scottish Power had moved the car while they carried out emergency repairs. When he couldn't contact the firm, Lawrence Rivers spent hours searching the area to no avail. It was eventually located about a mile away after some detective work by his wife. Well, let's get the latest weather forecast now. Over to Christopher.
Jackie, thank you. Hello there, good evening. Well, fairly cloudy conditions for many of us today, but there was some sunshine coming through the cloud at times, particularly on the Murray coast, but elsewhere some brightness here and there. And talking of cloud, let's take a look at the satellite picture. A great big stripe of it in the northwest. That is a weather front coming our way tonight, bringing rain and strengthening winds. Here's the chart. There's the wet weather pushing its way in across the country overnight, so a fairly soggy overnight of weather, and quite a windy one as well, with a fresh to strong southwesterly. And quite humid, 15, 16 degrees at its lowest. So, to tomorrow, it's a wet start in the south, but that rain will soon clear and it should improve markedly by late morning or early afternoon. Dry and bright for many, with some spells of sunshine, but it will be a blustery day from the west. And the further north and northwest that you are, Expect 1 or 2 showers to come through at times too. A fresher feeling day tomorrow, but having said that, still up to 18 or 19 degrees at times, but a cool feel with that wind, with a westerly right through the central belt. That'll feel somewhat chilly at times. In the northwest, well, some thicker cloud here, and again 1 or 2 showers coming through. And as we go through the rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, another weather front pushing in from the northwest, and that heralds some even cooler air and also some further wet weather. You can see the blues on the chart there digging in through Thursday and Friday, so a much fresher feel for the end of the week. Here's Thursday, a wet start in the west, the rain moving east through the course of the day, still quite blustery. The afternoon characterised by sunshine and showers, some of those showers with the odd rumble of thunder and merging it together at times. The further east that you are, generally the drier it will be. And Friday, somewhat similar really, winds west-northwesterly, a few showers around, some brightness out with them, the driest weather in the east, but look at the temperatures, 15 degrees probably at best, and overnight, perhaps just 5 or 6 degrees. That's the forecast for now.
It's all over, isn't it? Thank you, Chris. And now a reminder of tonight's main news. A former police chief accused of blaming Liverpool fans for the Hillsborough disaster has had all charges against him dropped. Sir Norman Bettison had faced 4 counts of misconduct in public office. The NHS in Scotland has drawn up plans to stop medicines running out if there's a no-deal Brexit. Senior NHS managers have been speaking to suppliers to ensure at least 6 weeks' worth of medicines and fresh equipment is available. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with the late bulletin just after the 10 o'clock news. Until then, though, you can get all the latest news and headlines online. But from everyone on the team across the country, have a good evening. Bye-bye.